Hi everyone, this is Arthur from Storewall. Just doing a bit of a video today on a range of hooks. Now I don't have the extensive kind of range here, but certainly it's going to give you a bit of an idea of different varieties, the thickness in steel that's used, and how they actually can attach to a wall, a slat wall, as well as your conventional kind of wall, or at least a piece of frame that's inside your garage. So I've just got a range of hooks, as I said. Some of these are from Storewall, some of these are actually purchased from different kind of retailers. Some of it is Bunnings mainly, but this is your typical kind of pegboard hook that's used in probably more so in a retail kind of environment. So I did buy this from Bunnings, and you can see the brand listed there. Pretty cheap, I think it's $1 or something. They come in a bundle of 5, I think. But these are your typical kind of pegboards, right? So you've got the holes in the wall, and you just hook it in. It's great, but in terms of its kind of security on the wall, it's pretty ordinary. But I will show you as far as how it hooks onto even a slat wall, because it does work. Okay. All right, very simple and easy. Pretty thin, but in terms of from a retail point of view, it's not a big deal. It does the job. So then what we might do is kind of, you graduate here into what we call the Storewall universal hook. Okay, so this is one of the more popular ones. You can see we've got the rubber kind of coating on the ends, the back plate, got the cam locking mechanism. You can see the thickness of the steel, and probably one of the things I'll show you when you compare some of these hooks together is how they vary, even between brands, right? But also even between some of the Storewall hooks too. Okay, so that's kind of the thickness, as you can see. Very well made. It's pretty actually heavy in itself. Very sturdy. So that's what we call the universal hook, right? And this one here is what we call a cradle hook. Okay, so very similar, but there is a much more kind of hook roundness to the hook itself. And if you kind of line them up, you can see that the thickness of the steel is exactly the same. The plate is the same. The cam lock mechanism is the same. They're very similar weights, but just the hooks themselves are quite different as far as the way they're shaped. Okay, a lot more rounder, one on the other. And then, so Storewall also has another one called what they call a wide hook. So it's basically very similar kind of hook, but the actual protruding ends are separated. They kind of widen as the length kind of increases. So again, back plate. But one of the things you'll notice though, as well, even with these hooks, is that there is a slight difference in the thickness of the steel. Okay, so you've got more length, but slightly thinner kind of steel, even with Storewall. Now the other thing to note with the Storewall hooks here is that in addition to being able to obviously work on a slat wall panel, which I'll just attach them in a second, you've also got the a drill hole here, which actually it does allow you to attach these to a wall, a conventional frame or a wall. But there are some slight limitations, which I will show you, but it does work. Okay, so it's not perfect, but it does work. Now, so that's what we call the wide hook. All right, so slightly kind of thinner in terms of the steel for the hook itself, but very similar weight to the others. Longer, obviously. So if you kind of line up, probably better if I line up the universal hook to this one, and you can see the difference in kind of length. Okay, you've got at least 1.5 inches here extra. And then we can kind of have a look at what we call Storee. So this is a hook that comes from, and I've done some videos on this before, a hook that comes from Bunnings. It's also a pretty sturdy kind of hook. You can see it's got its back plate, it's got its locking mechanism there as well. Okay, so basically you've got very similar locking mechanism to the pegboard one. So actually, if I show you this, might be of interest too for everyone, you can kind of see that, you know, you've got here, should be better. You've kind of got the one comes down and one comes up, and if we kind of zoom in a little bit, it's black, it's a bit hard to see, but you see you've got a couple of 2 and down, right? So, and that's basically the way that Storee uses to hook on. The plate is somewhere in this warehouse here, but they kind of hook onto there essentially, and those do on the bottom. Alright, so a little bit more in style with that. And then, but it is very sturdy, okay, pretty heavy and sturdy. I did find when I did the video, you can see the video on our blog, on our YouTube channel, but I did the review of Storees. The ability to take this on and off, even from a Storees panel, was, yeah, it wasn't easy. It was sturdy, but this wasn't easy, and I think in the end what I did conclude was that it does mark the panel in taking on and off, so it's not really made the same way as Storees is, so Storewall is. So when you look at Storewall's panels, right, so if I kind of put this on here, okay, so so once that's on, lock it in. Okay, I haven't even locked it in properly here because you do sometimes, depending on the strength of it, you do need to tighten it up with a screwdriver. But it's that simple though. It comes on, it comes off. Storage does not do that. Okay, so you can see here, I've got a bracket here, on and off. Okay, move it around if I need to, move it around. Okay, lock it in. Very simple, lock it in. Alright, now the next hook I've got here, so moving around a little bit, but this is a Shore hook. Okay, so this is a different brand. I bought these a few years ago. This is not really for slat walls. Okay, this is purely for your conventional kind of wall hook system. You can see there's a couple of drill holes. There's 4 of those, big ones for bolts, and then probably small ones for the screws. It's pretty lightweight compared to the others. It's not thin though, and the steel is thinner. I suppose in terms of the steel, if you kind of line it up here against this wide hook, it's thinner than that. So of the store ones that I've got here anyway, this is a thinner kind of steel. And in terms of its flexibility, look, it's relatively easy, but I mean, it's certainly not, this is a lot harder to move and to squeeze than that is. Okay, doesn't make a difference, not really. You don't really be doing that in a garage, but it's probably more about its strength in terms of weight, right? So that is, as I said, it's got the rubber coating though around the edges, and as I said, this can only be screwed onto a wall. So there's no other way to kind of apply this to your garage. And then what this one here is, this is what you call the 12-inch universal hook. So this is typically used with your tote bags. Okay, again, similar weight to the smaller ones in terms of store perspective. You've got your back plate, cam lock at the back. Now this thickness of the steel though is still also, even given the length of it, right, is also thicker than the Shore hook one. Okay, so it's a bit hard to kind of demonstrate here, but if I kind of line these up a little bit more, bear with me as I do this. Hopefully you can kind of see that there's a difference in the thickness of the steel. It is a little bit hard to tell, but it's probably a better kind of perspective there. Right, we can zoom in a little bit so you can kind of see the thickness of the steel. Okay, but they both work. Okay, they both work, and they're there for different reasons. So the last thing I wanted to quickly just talk about was applying store wall and other kind of these hooks generally to a conventional wall. So let's say, you know, your garage wasn't totally consumed by store wall or kind of other panels, slat wall panels, and you did have, you know, some framework there, or plaster, or chipboard, or some other kind of cement sheeted kind of wall, which obviously didn't have slat wall applied. You can use these hooks on your standard walls, right? So if you kind of compare this, as I said, the Shore hook is only for walls, and that works perfectly. Okay, as long as you can screw it in or bolt it on, you're not going to have an issue with there. It's moving it around, there's a problem, because you're going to have screw holes everywhere. Now, your typical, so stories, for instance, right, that won't work for 2 reasons. Firstly, there's no screw hole, but you can add one. Okay, you can screw it itself. The other thing, what you've got is there's these little kind of teeth at the back. They make it harder to apply, but look, it would work. Okay, it's not ideal, but it would work. All right, but you do need to drill in and create your own hole. Store wall, on the other hand, if we look at this hook here, because we have the screw hole at the top, it can be applied to your wall. Now, the only thing I'd say though is that, up front here about all this stuff, because you know you want it to work, is that the cam lock kind of lock at the back, right? It does protrude, and you can see it's kind of slightly wide, deep, or protrudes more than the actual panel itself, just slightly, which kind of means that as you kind of line it up against a wall, and I might just kind of line it up here to show you, it's probably a bit better. Yeah, you can see there. All right, you can see there. It's it's there. It works, but it's there is something protruding now. If you got rid of the cam lock, yeah, it will go away. Okay, that issue would go over, so you just have a back plate. But again, then you wouldn't. Well, you can still use it with on your slat wall panel, but the locking mechanism wouldn't be there. So anyhow, I just wanted to give you a bit of an overall idea of these different hooks and how they work. and different ways to kind of use them in your garage. And you can see I've got some other stuff here from Storwell, obviously, because we've got the full range, your brackets, etc. But yeah, look, certainly Storwell does come up trumps in a lot of different areas, and in its strength in steel and its formwork, but then also the quality of the finish of the product as well, quite different, and also I think overall a much superior kind of product to some of these others that I've got here anyway.